I want this session to be an interactive session. So if you have any questions, or if you think as I'm going on, you think you need to say you want to ask a question, by all means, please do. I don't know everybody's background, but I believe that everybody will be able to take something away from the session we're going to have this evening. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me do that just now. Sorry, I'm using two screens, so I got it all set up already before we started. So please tell me if you can see my screen. Okay.
We can see your screen.
Okay. So before we start, I'll tell you a little bit. Well, I'll just get you to have a look at the pictures up here. And I want you to tell me what you think all these people have in common. As I said, it's going to be a very interactive session. And apologies if I'm asking you questions. That's my teacher's head. I've got my teacher's cap on this evening, so I'm sure you'd understand where I'm coming from. Have a look at these people, and then please feel free to unmute yourself. Tell me if you think you know anything about them, that what they all have in common.
They're celebrities, they're popular, famous.
Yeah, that's it.
They're famous, they're popular. Yeah, okay, good. Anything else that they have in common? Which is not
money and fame.
Money and fame. Okay, yeah, true. Money and fame. They're all famous one way or the other. But I'll tell you one interesting thing about all of them. And it's the fact that they all have special needs. And that may surprise you. They've all got one form of special needs or the other. But that doesn't stop them from excelling in their career, and it hasn't stopped them from achieving what God has placed in them to achieve. Because I believe that everybody has a gift. But nobody was born empty, and therefore we all have a gift in us. And Bill Gates, for example, Steve Jobs, they're all on the autistic spectrum. Interestingly, people like Whoopi Gilbert, Tom Cruise, Richard Branson, they have dyslexia. And will.i.am and all the others, they all have ADHD. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been teaching for the past, I started teaching in 2007. And it wasn't something I planned or I purposed to do. I would say that I'm one of those people who accidentally, somehow, I found myself in teaching, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I believe that it's something that God had to push me into doing what He wanted me to do. So I'm a qualified special needs coordinator, and I'd explain what that means to you. It means that in every school in the UK, every single school in the UK has to have a special needs coordinator. And before you can become a special needs coordinator, you have to get a qualification. If you're employed as a special needs coordinator and you don't have the qualification, they would expect you to have it within 3 years of you working. If you don't, they would ask you to resign. So that's how strict they are with it. I've worked in mainstream schools mainly, and I've also worked in a specialist setting, but I've always worked in mainstream school. So objectives for today, I think I just want us to, I'm going to also talk a little bit about the company I set up, because I set this company up last year. And I'm also going to explain to you what SEN is all about. So when you see the word SEN, don't think, okay, it has to be that child with Down syndrome, or it has to be that child with learning difficulty. That's very obvious. There is what is called hidden disabilities. And if your child has that, you're supposed to support the child in order for the child to be able to excel. Don't shy away from it. And I know that in our society, as Black people, in church, we're very faith-driven people, which is important to us, because that's all we know, faith. That's all I know. But at the same time too, I always ask parents a question.
Yeah, you're right.
Can I go on?
Can they mute themselves?
Okay. So I always ask parents a question when I encounter black parents, and I don't know if we're all Black and ethnic minority here, but one of the questions I always ask is, if you have a headache, would you go to the doctors for painkiller? Would you go to the doctors? The headache is persistent. Would you go? You will be praying, but would you go to us to check it out? So if we are doing that, why can't we support our children when we find out that they have special needs? And in my 16 years of teaching, I have only come across 2 children from the Black community whose parents have signed them up, the parents couldn't deny the fact that they had special needs. But that's not to say that in all my 16 years of teaching and working in mainstream schools where you have over 1,200 children, that there are no other children there with special needs. But what I've discovered that in our community as Black people, we deny the fact that our children have special needs. There's a place for prayer, but there's a place of also understanding what your child has and then supporting them with prayer, and then supporting them, making sure that they are able to achieve their full potential just by a little tweak here and there. It makes that big difference to the children. And I'll go over some of the tweaks that happens in school, and maybe things that you can look out for as parents, so that if you have a child that's struggling with certain things, I'm not saying we should all go out there trying to find out, by all means, because funny enough, if I compare the non-Black parents to the Black parents, I've got parents who want diagnosis for every single thing, the whole world. And we laugh in school that these children have so many letters behind their names. But at the same time, too, on the other end of the spectrum, I've got the Black parents who will say, nothing is wrong with my child is perfectly fine. And I'm looking at this child and I'm saying, just a little bit support here will make a big difference. And the support I'm asking for is maybe something as simple as getting the child to use a laptop. It makes such a massive difference to them in school. But the Black parents are telling me there's nothing wrong with my child. The child is just being lazy. The child just needs, the child doesn't want to work. I'm fed up of. And then I've got the white parents who are saying, oh, everything is wrong with my child. You need to check my child. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I know that sometimes there's nothing wrong as it is. But yeah, so that's my background. And I am passionate about making sure that Black people, we don't deny our children. We don't deny our children. I've been fortunate to work with a parent recently, and the child is high-flying child, very successful, doing very well in school. But the problem with the child is he has all the ideas in his head, but when it comes to writing it down, he's not able to put the thoughts in his head on paper. And that means that he's not getting the grades that he should be getting. So the mother called me and she said, oh, they had some assessments in school, and I just put the assessments to one side. And I said, okay, send me the assessments. Let's see what it says. I read the assessment and I said to her, go back to school. Tell them, can they give this child a trial on a laptop? And explain to the child why he needs to use the laptop. Because what he would do with the laptop is he just dumps all the answers. As the answers are coming into his head, he's just dumping it down. So he's not processing, oh, should this be in paragraph 1? Should this be in paragraph 2? He's just dumping everything. And then when he reads through, he can then start saying, oh, that one should not be there. And he can tweak things here and there. And she phoned me back and said it's made such a big difference, that his grades have changed just by that little thing that was put in place, which is available in school. So that's pretty much my background. I would also share some of the resources that I know will be useful to parents, and I would also signpost parents to where you can go if you're not sure, if you need help, because it's out there. We just don't access it. And then there'll be opportunities for question and answer. It's going to be difficult for me to exhaust to say everything that I need to say in the short time that we have, but I'll try as much as possible. And I want us to also have the opportunity to ask questions and answer questions. So what is SEN? SEN simply means special education needs and disabilities. So it encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses child who has dyslexia, a child who has working memory difficulty, a child who has ADHD, a child who has ASD. That's all encompassing. Every school in the country, and I say every school in the country, is expected to be able to make provision for a child who has special needs. It doesn't matter how small it is or how big it is. Every school is expected by law to make provision for it. And the schools are governed by the SEN Code, the Code of Practice 2014. So it's not something that they take lightly. If you go to a school and you say that you're not fulfilling your obligations under the SEN Code of Practice, you will make, if you come to me as a SENCO and you say to me, I am going to pick you up on this one, the SEN Code of Practice, you will make me sit up a little bit and check what I'm doing for that child. When your child has SEN, your child is going to be on a register in school. The register is being monitored regularly, and it's part of the things that the school will be assessed when Ofsted comes into the school. So they take it really, really seriously. The register is fluid. A child can be on and off on the SEN register. So as the school puts in certain interventions, certain supports to meet the needs of the child, and the child is making expected progress, they may take the child off the register. And some children stay on the register till they leave school. So that's just the background on what SEN is. Now, when I started thinking about doing this, I thought, okay, we're all Christians, and I should really find out. So I did a search, I did a study on, are there any SEN people with disability in the Bible? And the few people that I found, Mephibosheth, and we all know he was crippled. Moses, for example, had a speech impediment, and yes, speech impediment is part of what SEN is. I found Saul as well, and it said Saul had depression and possibly bipolar. And one that actually made me laugh when I saw it, and it made me really laugh, is Isaac. And I thought, okay, Isaac, there was nothing in the Bible that talks about Isaac having disability. But then the analogy that this writer gave, which I thought I'll share with everybody, said Isaac lived with his mother. They had to find Isaac a wife. Isaac lived in his mother's tent. And when Rebecca was the one that received the covenant promise from God about their children. So that's, the writer then said, putting all that together, that in a grown man who his parents are still trying to find him a wife, and he lives in his mother's tent, possibly he's got some form of developmental delay, which means that he's not able to act his age. And possibly that's why. But I just thought I would throw that in, and maybe we'll go and do some Bible study on it. But what is SEN? SEN, the 4 main categories of SEN is divided into 4. We have the communication and interaction, which is where the autistic child will fall into, speech and language development. So maybe the child is age 4 and the child is 5 and the child is not talking like a 5-year-old should be. There are some assessment that will be done, and then the child will they might say that the child needs a speech and language therapist to work with them. And the child would have speech and language and communication needs. And then we have the cognition and learning. Cognition and learning would be things like you have your dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, all fall under cognition and learning. Then we have the SEMH, which is the social, emotional, mental health. And since COVID, we have seen an increase in the number of children who are in this group for different reasons. The children are they've dealt with COVID differently, and there's a big rise in the number of children who are in this category, to the point where if you want to get your assessed for having ADHD, for example, there's almost a 2-3 year waiting list. before that child can get assessed. And the last one, which is the obvious one, would be the child who has a visual impairment, the child who has physical disabilities, multisensory impairments. And those are the ones that we know. I'm sure if I asked you at the beginning, I said, when you say somebody has a disability, what would you be saying? You'll probably tell me a child who has Down syndrome, a child who is blind, a child who is deaf. Yes, those are, but there are also a lot of other hidden disabilities that you don't see. But that's not to say that children, or even some of us as adults, I met a parent in his 40s who said, because of everything going on, I just decided to go and do my test. And I found out that I had ADHD. And that's why I've struggled all my life in school, had I known. So, but that's the main categories that all the disabilities, all the SEN needs will fall into. And I'm just going to go quickly too. So if your child has SEN, if your child has special needs, or you're suspecting that your child has special needs, what do you do? How should you approach it? I would say, first thing I'll say is, don't stay quiet about it. Don't stay silent about it. If you don't remember anything, just remember my name, Nike Dagunduro. There's a Nike Dagunduro in every single school in the country. They have to have one, a Senko. Book an appointment with a Senko and say you want to discuss some of the things that you have observed. It's possible that the school have also been observing it, but they haven't told you. Then in collaboration, you can start monitoring that, and then they will have to put things in place. Every school is expected to put in reasonable adjustments. Those are phrases that if you have them and you use them when you go to the school, to go to the parents teachers meeting, to say, what reasonable adjustments are you putting in place for my child? Because according to the Disability Act, you have to put in reasonable adjustments for children when they have SEN needs. So if you know that when you go to the school, and I'm not saying go to the school militant, because when you go to the school and it's all about being militant about it, you're going to get the person's back up. But if you're going to the school to say, look, I'm here because I have my child's best interest, and I know you have my child's best interest, and I want us to work together. Can you please, let's find a way of supporting this child. Simple things that the schools can do. They can give the child 25% extra time, and trust me, that makes a big difference to some children. Just by getting that. It's not automatic that you get it, because there'll be tests that we have to do in school, but there's no harm in putting that child through that test. If that child doesn't qualify, she doesn't qualify, or he doesn't qualify. But if they qualify, please let your child get the 25% extra time. Because if the exam is 1 hour, 1 hour, and you give the child 25% extra time, it makes a big difference. And sometimes it's a difference between the child's B and the child getting an A, just by that small amount of time that you give them, because they're a bit more relaxed. They're not stressing themselves about having to rush to finish, because they know they've got that extra time. Simple things like, I mean, that's an extreme, but I've had children who we've had to put in separate rooms in the sense that they have one invigilator to them. They don't stay with the whole cohort when they're writing their exams, because they qualify for it. But I've not seen any Black parents who would push for that. It's more the white parents who will say, my child needs a separate room because they've got anxiety. They've got medical records, they've got everything they would get, push for it to get their child into that separate room. And sometimes it does make a difference. Again, I'm not one of those parents who mollycoddles children. So you have to know your child to know whether what you're trying to get for this child is actually something that the child needs, or is just something that you know your child, and make sure that you're giving the child what's best for them. I know every one of us here, we all love our children to bits. We will do anything for them. So if there's anything that you want to do for them means that you have to push on some doors to open for the children, please do it. Please do it. I've known children who have missed out on places in Russell Group universities because the parents have just been a little bit ignorant. If I know what I know now, when my children were doing their GCSEs or doing their A levels, I would have done things differently. I would have definitely done things differently. Because I do have a child who very good with everything, but his handwriting is hideous. And I've also been in a position where I've been an examiner. I've marked business studies GCSE. And I'm looking at the paper, and the papers, they don't give us, when you're marking exams, you don't mark them. They don't give you the papers. They scan them to you. Now, if I have a child whose handwriting is bad and the paper is scanned and I'm reading it on the computer, please tell me how that child, I'm going to give that child the right grades. It's not possible. Plus, as an examiner, some exam bodies, awarding bodies, they mark you based on the number of scripts you can mark. So am I going to spend 20 minutes trying to mark one paper that I can't read the writing? No. They would, no teacher would, no examiner would do that. They're marking it, they're reading as much as they can read, and they're moving on. So if they can't read it properly and they think, okay, well, maybe this is what he said, I think I'm trying to decipher what this child is saying, I can, they're just going to give the child the grades and then move on. So please, parents, be aware of what your child needs and make sure that you're approaching the school. Please approach the school. Like I said, if you don't take any, if you can't remember anything, remember my name, and you say that every school has a Nike Edagunduro, and you go and speak to that Nike Edagunduro in that school. This is what I've observed. My child is reading. When they read, I ask them questions. They can answer all the questions. But when it comes to writing it down, they're struggling to write it down. It might be working memory difficulty. It might be processing difficulty. It's as simple as, okay, yes, it is. If a child has processing difficulty and they're assessed in school, it means that they will get 25% extra time. Or it might mean that they're going to give them a reader pen to use. There's so many things out there that the schools can put in place. And the schools are not necessarily going to throw it at you if you don't ask sometimes. So cognition and learning, I think I wouldn't necessarily go into every single one just because of time, but cognition and learning, if you want to know, so it's language processing. The child is phonetically they can read things. I mean, they can see something and they're trying to read it, but they're not reading the right thing. And you're saying to your child, can you see what you're reading? Can you read it properly? And they're just, yes, they're reading it, but what they're reading is not the same as what's on paper. Processing, they're thinking about the answer. They know the answer, but they're struggling to give you the answer. They need extra time to be able to think about the answer, process it, and then give you the answer. It's those little things that you think, if you're seeing those traits in the children, don't overlook it. Please pray. There's a place for prayer, but there's also a place for you to do what you need to do and access the support that the child needs. If the child has dyslexia, for example, it's possible that it's genetic, because there's a lot of research that's gone into it to say that a child has dyslexia. If you look at it in the family, there's somebody that has it in the family. It might not be as pronounced, or it might be even much more, but there's somebody in the family that has it. Communication and interaction, which is becoming very prevalent in our society. It's the child who is on the autistic spectrum. And research shows that we have more children on the autistic spectrum than we used to have years ago. Nobody knows what's the cause, whether it's because there's more research and there's more diagnosis being done, or it's just a case of what we're eating. It's not anything to do with the injection, with the MMRI, measles, mumps, and rubella injection, but it's nobody knows what causes it. Nobody knows, but it's a spectrum. So you can have a child who is on one end, and you can have a child who is on the other end, and you can have a child who is in the middle. No two autistic children are the same. But again, if you're seeing those traits, if the child is much younger, you're seeing those traits, it's something that perhaps you should start taking into account and looking at how you can support the child. The child would thrive. The child will succeed. Like the Bible says, our children are for signs and wonders. The child will succeed. It just means that that child needs a little bit extra help than what other children would need. It means that the child will need to be taught a little bit more of certain things than what other children will be taught about. Things like, for example, being making eye contact. They're not things that an autistic child should do. And please stop beating your child if you think they're on the spectrum and you're saying, look at me, I'm talking to you. Look at me, I'm talking to you. They can't look at you. So please don't beat them for that, or don't tell them off for it, because you're just making life more difficult for them. It's not something that they will do. An autistic child, for example, you can't crack jokes with them because they don't understand it. You can't. I remember when I first started teaching and somebody said to us, somebody said to a child, just get out of, maybe I'm going to get you out of the list. I'm going to get you out of the class. You're going to go and look at the sky. And the child picked her bag and went out and was looking at the sky. So when I went and I told the teacher, I said, but you shouldn't have said that. You should have read the child's profile to see that she's autistic, because she will take everything literally, or they will take everything literally. So if they do that, and I know that sometimes African parents will say, yes, you do it and let me see if you try it and you see what would happen to you. Yes, the child will try it because you've told the child to try it. It's not for the fact that they're being disrespectful to you, but it's just because their brain is wired differently. And that's why I tell parents, that child's brain is simply just wired differently, not the way you and I's brain is wired. They're just wired differently. Sometimes they struggle to keep friendship. They struggle to make friends. It's all part of is all part of being an autistic person. And the best thing that we can do as parents is, yes, I know my child. My child has this. How do I manage my child? How do I support my child? How do I make sure that that friendship is actually working? How do I make sure that my child does not take everything, she understands what I'm trying to say and does not take everything literally? It might be as simple as visual support. Just putting everything as a diagram. Or they come in and they're so disorganized. Or an autistic child likes to know what's happening. You can't just wake up and tell an autistic child, let's go, we're going out. That's not going to work. They're going to have a meltdown. So if you know that, it's about planning. Okay, John, tomorrow we're going to Auntie Kemi's house and we're going to spend 2 hours. And then we're going to the shop. Let them know. So sometimes, I mean, I'm looking at, sometimes when I say things like this, you're thinking, am I not the mother? Can I not just do what I like and the child follows me? Yes, you can. But in this particular instance, because the child's brain is wired differently, they need to be told, they need to be managed very well so that their anxiety levels are not increased. If they're pre-warned, they're in a much better place than when you don't warn them at all about it. So it's those little tweaks that as parents, if we know we have that child who has that condition, it's just those simple things that we can do. If there's a parent in our church whose child is autistic, and I've been kind of supporting and mentoring her and the child. And when sometimes service overruns, and I told her, I said, if you've told him, he was about 12, 13 then, I said, if you've told him service finishes at 2 and you're going to meet him at the gate at 2, I said, if the service overruns, pack your bag and go, because he's going to be out there waiting for you at 2. 2 is 2. So you have to, in a way, function differently because you have got that child. So don't say, Pastor hasn't finished, I'm not going. His anxiety level will be raised because in his head, he's processed 2. And 2 is 5 past 2, 10 past 2. Then he starts having a meltdown. And then they call you to say that child is having a meltdown and you're upset with the child. But if you had managed it differently, it would have been different. SCMH is children who have ADHD, who have anxiety disorder, OCD, ADD, eating disorders as well. If you have a child who is constantly fidgeting, my background will say, smack that child if that child is fidgeting. What's wrong with them? Why can't they sit still? Or people are looking at you. You take your child to a party and people are looking at you, or you take them to church and people are looking at you and thinking, you can't train your child. You can't. What's wrong with you? You're a bad parent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there are no instances where it's parenting issues, but it's not always in all cases. And I think that even in churches, I think that we should start making allowance for children who have special needs, because I have noticed that when we have parents who have children with special needs, they either end up not coming to church or they end up leaving the children at home, because everybody's just looking at them. Everybody's just not, we're not tolerant when there are children with special needs. Whereas, where else should they be if not church? Physical and sensory, I think I'll leave out because those are the kind of very obvious ones. When you have a child who is visually impaired, or when you have a child who is deaf, or disability, Down syndrome and all that, some of them would fall under physical and sensory needs. But also, you might have a child who has all the other conditions and has sensory needs. They can't wear a particular type of cloth, a particular type of t-shirt. They can't have their t-shirt over their head. They can't have a particular type of socks. They can't smell it. They don't like the smell of onions. They don't like the smell of this. They don't like the sound that foil paper makes. It's simple things like that that would trigger a child who has sensory needs. So know what the child is sensitive to, and just try and work around it or try and manage it. It makes your life easy and it makes the child's life easy. It's knowledge. And if we have that knowledge, we're able to help our children better. So I'll say that what's next. If you're suspecting that your child has any of those things, or you're suspecting it at all, go and find the SENCO in the school, book an appointment to see them, and ask them, this is what your concerns are. Can they do an assessment, or can they monitor your child in order for you to be able to get to the bottom of it? If it's nothing, then at least you know that you've tried and it's nothing. But you don't want to be 20 years down the line and thinking, if I had known, my child would have actually been better. Their mental health would have been managed better. A lot of children who have special needs and they're being overlooked, most of the time, they end up having mental health difficulties in future. And that's not our portion in Jesus' name. That's not the portion of our children in Jesus' name. So knowledge is power. We know, Bible says you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. Speak to your GP. There are certain referrals that the GP can also do. If the children are younger, they can refer to the pediatrics team for them to be assessed. Find agencies that can support you. If you're hitting a brick wall in a school, find agencies. There are some advocacy agencies that will be out there to support you. I know that I had a parent, for example, who I wasn't responding to, or they were not getting what they wanted from me. They got in touch with this agency, and trust me, the agency was on my case until they got what they wanted. So there are agencies out there that you can speak to. Please don't keep it to yourself. I know, again, in our community, it's not something that we talk about. It's not something that we just don't, we shy away from it. There was I think it was before COVID, we organized a seminar in church for parents who have children with special needs. And can you believe the whole of KICC, there was only one parent who turned up. One parent who turned up. So please don't keep it to yourself. And it's not, you did not offend God. You did not do anything wrong. I'm trying to remember where that scripture is. I think it's in John, where the disciples were asking about the blind person, and they were saying that who sinned? Is it the father or the mother? You did not sin. God saw you well able to give you that child so that you can nurture that child. You can bring out the best in that child. That child can fulfill their purpose. That child can fulfill their destiny in your hands. And with God on your side, that child will fulfill their purpose. That child will fulfill their destiny. That child would achieve that which God has set aside for that child to achieve. Focus on the positives. An autistic child, for example, I love autistic children. And one of the reasons why I love them is because they can't lie. They will not tell me lies. So if anything goes wrong in class, they will be the first one to say, Miss, he did it, he said it, she did it, and you can get the truth from them. They have special talents. Some of them are very good with computers. I had one, whenever my computer, he says, Miss, I will hack into your computer and I can resolve every problem that you have. Let's harness the gifts that our children have because they've got gifts. Be consistent. Consistency sometimes is very hard when you're a working parent. And if you say to that child, if you do this wrong, you are going to get into trouble. I'm going to take your laptop. I'm going to take your iPad. Follow through with it because it will make your life easy. Because even though the children have special needs, they would manipulate you just like any other child. They're not stupid. So if you allow them to, and you say, okay, that child, he didn't do, I'll let you be tomorrow. If you do it again, that child will be tomorrow, and then tomorrow, and then tomorrow, and then tomorrow. So consistently be consistent with the children. Set boundaries, please, please. Doesn't matter whether the child is autistic or not. Boundaries are boundaries. Boundaries, even in school, they know me. I set my boundaries. And if I say, sometimes I say to them, get out of my office. I need you out of my office now because I'm really upset with you. So get out of my office. They will do because I've set the boundaries. Don't overlook it and say, oh, because that child has special needs, it's okay. I will give them leeway. I will tolerate it. No, there are boundaries. If you say to them, when you come back from school, this is what you need to do. They need to be doing it regardless. Boundaries are important. I said, study, do your research, get understanding, get information, know your child's trigger. What triggers your child? If your child is having a meltdown every Monday morning, what's the trigger? If your child is having meltdown or the Tuesday morning, what's the trigger? Maybe there's a subject, maybe there's something going on. Find out, know the child's trigger, and communicate with the school regularly. Communicate before you get to the point where your child is being expelled from school or your child is being excluded from school. Make sure that you are in constant communication with the school. For example, if your child has had a meltdown in the morning, things have gone wrong because he was looking for a particular pair of socks, and it might be as simple as that for a child who is autistic. They can't find that socks. That's the socks he wanted to wear and he can't find it. So everything is going wrong that morning. Phone the school straight away. He's having a wobble this morning. Please prepare yourself. He's coming into school. We might be late, but he's going to come into school. School can manage it before he gets into school. When he comes in, for example, that child might just be put in the inclusion room to sit down there and calm down for about half an hour, doing some coloring or something as simple as that before they go into class. And this applies to secondary school, not just primary school as well. Instructions should be given in order. I was guilty of this, and I would tell my children, put the plate in the sink. I just give the instructions as it comes to my head. That's not helping a child who has special needs. Your instructions have to be in sequence. Very simple. Just put the instructions in sequence. When you come back from school, you take your shoes off, you put them in the corridor. When you take your t-shirt, you take your school uniform off, you put it in the corridor. Simple things like that. And just make sure that it's in proper order, it's in sequence for them. Discipline with purpose and warmth. Set clear expectations. I will skip a few of this, and I'm more than happy to share my slide if anybody wants it. And I said, do what you know to do. Pray, talk to God, worship. God remains faithful. God is always faithful. God will help you if you're in that position, or if you know anyone in that position. Be an encourager to them that they're not alone. God is with them. God will help them. there's grace available for them. I think I have gone over my time, so I am going to stop. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to stop here, and there'll be opportunities to ask me questions. And then if there's anything I haven't touched on, it might be an opportunity to touch on it. So please ask me questions. I love questions. And if I can't answer, I'll tell you I can't.
Please unmute yourself if you have any questions.
Any questions? You can type it in the chat if you want, and I'll read it out.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for the very insightful, what would I say, talk. My question is, does a child have to be assessed as having special needs before having, before they can have like SEN, what did you call them now? There was a word you used. There was a phrase you used.
Reasonable adjustments.
Reasonable adjustments in school.
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that before you can say a child has SEN, it means that they need something extra beyond what the classroom teacher can offer. So maybe they need the teacher to repeat instructions severally for them to understand. Maybe they need a special type of pen to write in class. Anything that's different from what the classroom teacher would offer means that the school would put that child on their SEN, may put that child on their SEN register. So the assessments may not necessarily be assessment from a medical practitioner. It may be an assessment from the school. So the school is saying that that child is not making expected progress. We've tried everything,